So first things first, how are you?
Very good. Actually, it's been very busy, but all in a very positive,
Sure.
good way. I'll be pretty upset if I wasn't busy at the moment, so it's a good thing.
That's good to hear. Now, I want to jump back to the previous album quickly, because having kind of experienced and having had the career that you've had, what was it like that album was both critically and commercially well received?
Um, what do you mean? What is it like if for the new
Well,
one being?
no, the previous one, Savage.
Oh, sorry.
What did that mean to you? Kind of having gone through what you've gone through in your career.
Oh man, it was epic, absolutely epic. I said at the time, I've said many times actually since then, that I honestly got more emotional or more satisfaction from it than I did from the number ones, near the beginning, and I think people doubt me when I say that, but the reason is that the original success, it was so quick and it seemed to come so easily. There was no sense of achievement in the same way. Savage followed a 30, 35 year or more period of being absolutely, finished, and then just bringing myself back from that sort of hopeless kind of position back to a point where you're now sort of not number one, but number two. You're selling out the Albert Hall in 2 hours. You know what I mean? It was a fantastically satisfying thing because there'd been such a long struggle. And so it meant so much more because you had decades of hope and disappointments and, ambitions and planning and scheming and all these things going on, and work and work and work, obviously. It meant the world to me. In fact, when we got the chart position, my wife took the phone call because I was too nervous.
Okay.
So we're sitting in a hotel room in London, and the phone call came in, and I'm just got my head down. I couldn't bear it. And she said, "Oh, you stayed at number two. That's the position, number two." And I cried like a baby, absolutely cried like a baby for 10 minutes. And she filmed it, actually. There's a film,
Okay.
which is pretty cruel if you think about it. But she did. And I had no idea. I honestly had no idea that emotion was just sitting there, just under the surface, and I think that emotion was all that pent up frustration and longing and hope, that have been going on for such, a massive chunk of my life had been
Right.
tied up in trying to get to that point. And when it happened, it just all came out. So it meant the world to me. It really did.
When you were working on that album, did you know you had something interesting or something that would go over well?
Not as well as it did, no. I remember feeling really nervous about making it because the album before, Splinter, that had got to number 20, I think, in the chart in Britain. And that had been the first time I'd been in the chart for over 30 years. So that felt like a massive accomplishment. And I was really, really proud of myself. And then I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to make an album that would do as well as that. So when I started writing Savage, in fact, the first song on Savage that I wrote was called Bed of Thorns. That has nothing to do with climate change. That's all about being frightened to make Savage. The pressure and the fears and the anxieties that you're under because of what I had to follow, because the previous one had done better. So then Savage gets to number two, and now you've got to make another one. So it just gets worse, man. It gets worse. So I was, when I was making Savage, I was pretty confident that I was making a good record. I really liked the songs and the subject matter of it. It felt really important to me, and I really enjoyed writing and trying to explore that human condition that it was talking about. And then we started working on the artwork and the pictures and getting the clothes, and all that came together, and it looked perfect for what the songs were about. And you're trying to create this world, this future world. How do you look? How would people look in that time? And all this thought and that had gone into it, and everything just came together, and it was a really lovely project to work on. and I really, really enjoyed it. But no, I had no idea it would do. But my biggest hope that it would be able to make the top 20 and I not go backwards from the one before. That was it. And when it got to number 2 early in the week, because they give you a chart position every single day, but only the one counts at the end of the week. And it went in at number 2. But I've had that before. I mean, I've had albums go into the chart really high the day they come out and then just disappear completely, 7 days later. And that's what I expected. And so the next day it was number 2. The next day it was number 2. Then the next day. And then you start to panic, because that kind of, that feeling of hope creeps into you. And that's horrendous, being hopeful.
Sure.
Because now you think about,
you have something to lose.
Yeah. And then you start thinking, if it doesn't go top 10, I'm going to be disappointed. How crazy is that?
Right.
You would have given your right arm to have been number 10, a week ago. And now and then you think if it doesn't stay top 3, you're going to be disappointed. Fucking hell. It gets ever more stupid.
Right.
But you can't help it. You can't help it. But I knew number 1 was out of the question, so I never had that because I can't remember who it was, Foo Fighters, I think, but they were selling 10 albums for every one of mine, so I knew that they were there. That was never a danger, but there was a lot of other people moving around that were challenging Savage. When it got to the chart, it was very exciting but very nerve-wracking.
But what I find very interesting about this all then is because you've had both, obviously. You've had records that did extremely well, and you've had records that didn't do so well. But creatively, did you always believe in what you were making? In a sense, maybe that's too direct, but did you always kind of creatively? Were you creatively always in a good spot in a way?
No.
Okay.
No, most of the time, but not always.
Okay.
I did an album in '92 called Machine and Soul, which was a pretty poor effort, really.
Okay.
To be fair to me, it really was the best I could do at the time. It wasn't as if I was lazy or didn't try hard. I really tried hard with it, but it wasn't as good as the other stuff has been. That was probably the only one that I would look back on with sort of a degree of embarrassment or shame.
Okay.
Really, but not, like I say, not for the lack of trying. I really did try, but I just wasn't in a good place. I didn't really know what I wanted to sing about. Creatively, I felt very lost and unsure of myself, and the career was in a really bad place. Relationship was in a really bad place with my girlfriend, who left soon after. Money was shit. I was massively in debt, and they were trying to repossess my house, and it was just, life was
right.
And creatively, I knew that I wasn't doing well. No flow of ideas. Everything was painfully dragged out. I looked pretty shit, actually. It was all just shit. It was all shit. And the music is a witness to that. It wasn't great. And then the one after that, Sacrifice, completely different story. I found my way again. I got a direction. I was passionate about things. In those years in between, I've met my Gemma, who's my wife now, been together nearly 30 years. She was massively helpful in helping me to find my way back to you know what it was? When you're a kid and you're making music, it's all you think about. You love it. You don't care about success or not. You just love being involved in music. And then you get successful, and it sort of changes, and you become career-minded, and then the career struggles, and you become paranoid and obsessed about trying to save the career, and it stops being about music, and you forget that you loved it. You forget why you loved it, And the trick for me was rediscovering that again, and that's how she helped me, finding your way back to think of music as a hobby. That's all it is. It's a hobby. It's a hobby first. You make the things that you love. Every song on that album, you must love it. It's not there for a reason. It's not there because an A&R man said you should do a ballad, or a record company said you should do an up-tempo dance track or a cover version. None of that bullshit. Everything on the record is there because you just love that music and you love that lyric, and you love what you're singing about, and you care about what you're singing about.
Right.
That's what a hobby is, isn't it? You love what you're doing. And I had to find that again. And I did, thanks to my wife. And so for 94, the Sacrifice album, from then onwards, I've always remembered that. And it's always been a hobby first, career second. But you still worry about things like chart positions. So,
Well, it's natural, I think.
That comes next. You know,
right.
When you've done the album, there's a whole world of other things now to worry about. But your reason for making it must be pure. It must be. You must not be thinking about anything else other than that piece of music when you're working on it. When it's done and it's finished, you can think about all the career business shit you have time for, but not before. You know, make the music first and then try to sell it.
And I do think with every creative outlet, if you're proud of it, obviously you want it to do well afterwards. So it's not. I think it's natural to kind of be anxious about what people might think about. About it.
It is. Yeah, you're right.
But if we move that towards kind of the last three albums, including this the new one, Intruder, because you mentioned that you kind of have to do it for the right reasons. You need to have something to say in a way, and you definitely had something to say with these. Last three albums. I don't know if they kind of in your mind fit together as a three-part thing, but they're moving in the same direction, I would say. So how have you seen kind of the overall concept, or how has that overall concept kind of entered your mind over the past years?
Well, the first one of the three, Splinter, was actually about but that's a very personal one. And I went through the 2 or 3 years I got diagnosed with depression, and I was having anxiety attacks and all sorts of weird shit was happening. And they put me on antidepressant tablets for quite a while. And I stayed on them too long, so then it becomes a different problem.
Right.
And so I wrote Splinter as a way of helping me through that and helping me to come out at the end of it. Because I honestly believe that if you're able to write about these things, in the nature of writing about these things is to think about them very deeply, because you're trying to find the right words. You're trying to find the words that express how you feel, or what was happening, or the damage that was done, whatever. And so in the course of doing that, of course, it's almost like self-therapy. You're talking this stuff out, so it's being released, it's coming out. And Splinter was very, very important to me for that reason. I really credit working on that album as one of the things that helped me to come out of the depression at the other end, unscathed, with no scars to show for it. In fact, better than I was before, which I believe I am. That's a very different thing to Savage in a way, because Savage is just, a science fiction look at climate change and what we may become. And Intruder is climate change again, but about where we are now and how the Earth might feel about that, and how it. I believe it would view us as an infestation that needs to be destroyed before we destroy it. So I think this one and Savage have that sort of climate change connection, but even then, they're very different ways of looking at it. Prior to that, Splinter, I know what you mean, but it has the same kind of
sonically, perhaps a little bit more.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the last three in particular have a consistency about the way they're put together and the structure of the songs and the performance of the song, which they relate to each other very, very closely, very, very well. But yeah, apart from Splinter, they're subject-wise, they're different.
And am I right in saying that the emphasis on kind of what we're doing to our planet came out of kind of a poem that your daughter wrote?
Yeah, absolutely. My youngest daughter, Echo, she wrote a poem when she was 11, nearly 12, but 11, late 11, called Earth. And it was really, as the first poem she'd written that I was aware of, and it was, I thought it was brilliant. And it was the Earth talking to the other planets in the solar system, explaining to them why the Earth was sad and all the horrible things that people were doing to it, and why it felt let down by them. And it was a child's view of that problem, but it showed a great deal of understanding and empathy, for the planet, and sympathy for the planet. And I thought it was amazing. And I brazenly stole it and used it. So I stole that idea completely and expanded it somewhat, and made it into an album. But I give her credit. When the album comes out, you'll see that you open the gatefold, and there's her poem in full on the artwork, with the name and how old she was when she wrote it. So I'm very, very keen to acknowledge that that's where it came from. It came from my youngest child.
And I've heard before, I've read before that you kind of use them at times as a soundboard. So what did your daughter think of the music then that you made inspired by her poem?
Oh, they're lovely about it, actually. I mean, all three of them think it's the best album I've ever made.
Okay.
I don't even know if that's genuine, but that's what they say. But but my middle one, Persia and Raven both sing on the record. They sing on them seven songs, I think. Echo, I asked Echo to, but she doesn't like her voice. She didn't want to sing. Doesn't think she can sing. Okay. But she's got her poem on there, so she's there.
More of the writer.
Yeah, Persia co-wrote a song on it called "A Black Sun," and I genuinely mean that. It wasn't that she did a little tune and I built a song around it. She wrote the song, and I helped out a little bit with the chorus melody, and I did the lyric and the vocal. Okay. But everything else, I mean, she genuinely wrote that song. It's 90% hers, and so that that's a really cool thing as far as I'm concerned. That's an amazing talent in somebody that young. She was, sure. I think she was 13 when she wrote it. Yeah, 13 or 14, but a kid when she wrote it, and it's beautiful. It's a really, really cleverly constructed melody that she's worked on, melodies that she's put together. It's a real family affair, this one.
That was very good. Very quick segue. I don't know if you were already writing songs by the time you were 13, but if you were, do you remember one of the songs that you wrote around that time?
I was writing some utter shit. I was writing lots of poetry. Okay. I was massively influenced by Mark Bolan, so it was all about the stars and antelopes and hippie shit, really. Lots and lots of hippie shit that I didn't really understand. I just liked the way it sounded. So I was doing awful poetry, awful lyric. I remember I had one song called Warriors from Mars, MARNZ, some science fiction planet. Proper shit. Really shit. It's amazing that I ever ended up with a career. If you look at what I was doing, you'd never have thought it would go anywhere. But my kids, my oldest one, Raven, has written, I think it's 60 songs, she said, during lockdown, since last March, 60 songs. And I've not heard all 60 of them. I've heard about 7 or 8 because she's really cautious about playing them. But absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Right. She's so gifted. In fact, I have a Patreon page, and I did a new update for Patreon last night, and I put 3 or 4 bits of her music of us in the studio working on it, because I thought people need to hear this. She is so clever. She is far, far better at her age than I was at that age. Right. Do you know what I mean? She's got that. She understands melody and structure and layering. She can adapt it on the fly. Lyrics are great, fucking clever, really, really clever. Both of them, Persia and Raven, really clever. Persia's songwriting's I say one on the album, which is amazing. Right. And the little one, Echo, I mean, her poetry that started with Earth has just grown and grown and grown and grown, and she sees that as her future writing. Right. So they're all creative. I'm really happy about that. I want them to go out and be creative and contribute something.
Yeah, because I was going to ask about that, because I believe your parents were very supportive in kind of helping you along the way. But having kind of gone through what you've gone through in the music business, and I hear often that the music business can be quite fickle, and it's like you mentioned before, it's not always guaranteed, and it can be very difficult. So is that something you kind of warn your children about?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, the music business is brutal. I mean, brutal. It's unbelievably unforgiving and cold and quick to attack, quick to ridicule, quick to crush your hopes and your dreams. You've got to be fucking hard up there to withstand all the things that are going to come at you. Even if you have a good career, there's going to be a lot of shit coming your way. So yes, I certainly warn them about that. But the difference with them is that hopefully I'll be there beside them through all of it, having been all through it myself. So, that's their advantage. I didn't have that.
Right.
So I had to kind of do all of my learning and experiencing sort of on my own, really. And it is difficult. And I've got Asperger's, and I think that's where that really helped me a lot.
Okay.
To be able to sort of emotionally deal with that and just put that to one side, just kind of, you're able to sort of navigate around emotions a little bit as an Asperger's person, and to have an obsessive kind of drive and focus, which again, very, very useful. I don't know that they have that, but they have me. I can be the thing that guides them through it. But even then, it will be difficult. But my middle daughter yesterday, she has her Instagram account. She's got her followers and so on. She's just been signed by Select Models in London, so she's doing really, really well. She's only young, so everything's going great for her. But she's got people on Instagram giving her shit. Adult
right.
men,
right.
giving her shit. And I've been really worried about that, how they're going to deal with that. And she's just amazing, absolutely fucking amazing. She just deals with it. Sorts them out. She did this post which she put up some of this man's posts, whited his name out. She couldn't see who it was. And just did this little thing about how pathetic it was, cyberbullying a child, and, how she pitied them, and just absolutely crushing this man, brilliant, man, brilliant. So
yeah, that's great.
She already knows what to do, and she's strong. So she's not a worry.
That's good. Well, getting back to the album, when you talk about climate warming, and a lot of the songs kind of allude to the fact that we're kind of sticking our heads in the sand about what's going on, and also that the timeline is getting shorter and shorter for us to do something. So are you hopeful in a sense about what we will still be able to do?
Well, I am stupidly optimistic, generally speaking. So, I kind of am in a way, but it's difficult to be. I don't know if I said this earlier in our conversation, but I genuinely believe that the best thing that we can do at my generation, younger than me, the best thing that we can do is to try to persuade enough people that it is genuine, there is a genuine crisis, and it is close, which will bring enough pressure to bear on the politics of the day, by who they vote for and who they bring into power in the near future. The hope being that those people would do enough to slow it down enough so that it will still be here when the next generation comes along, and then when they come into power, because I believe it's that generation that will have enough conviction and enough support to make the changes necessary. And it needs to be a fundamental change in the way human beings interact with the world, the way we use energy, the way we create energy. It's a fundamental rethinking of the human direction that has to happen. And I do not believe that the leaders we have at the moment will do anything near enough, but they might just buy us enough time for the next generation to do what needs to be done. So that's where the hope and the optimism is.
Right.
But it's not particularly strong. It is there, and I'm hopeful, but I'm not confident that that's going to happen by any means. Far from it. What does give me that sort of glimmer of hope is how my children feel about it.
Right.
Absolutely, totally aware of the problem and what needs to be done, and wanting to see something done. If all of that generation feel like that, then something will happen. Because then you have that groundswell of public opinion around the world that forces politician to do something. And when that generation become the politicians of tomorrow, they're already thinking that way. They already want those things to be done. And now they have the power to do it. So it can happen. It can happen. But what we have at the moment is, politicians who are saying a great deal, but actually doing something very different. Talking about fossil fuel needing to be phased out. In the same year, they give new licenses for more drilling of a new oil field in the Antarctic. Well, hang on. That doesn't make sense, does it? You're saying one thing and doing another. So there's a whole load of there's horrendous bullshitting going on. It's and there's still obviously vast amounts of people that don't even believe in it. That's shocking, isn't it?
I don't know what to say about that. It's very, I try not to discount people who feel that way, because I don't know why they feel that way, but it's a strange it's a strange thing that people try to kind of escape responsibility in that sense, almost. I don't know. It's a bit
put
strange.
Your head in the sand. Yeah.
Right.
Do you know what? Living in America has shown me that there are as many people who are quite prepared to believe absolutely in the ridiculous as there, and refuse to believe in the scientifically proven, evidence abundant, obvious over here. It's just shocking how you can have these people who are so blinkered, that they will believe the most outrageously stupid theories you've ever fucking heard in your life. Just what the fuck are you talking about? And yet over here, where there is all this evidence and all this proof, and it's happening in front of your own fucking eyes, and you say it's not real.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, you believe in fucking God, do you? But this isn't real. But that is, you despair, don't you? You just fucking hell.
Throughout your career, you've written about these type of topics. So when you write these type of songs, do you want to make people think, in a sense, with your music as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's not as if I'm trying to be some kind of guru or feel that I have any kind of special sort of knowledge or intuition. There's nothing arrogant about it. I really don't mean it that way at all. But if I can think of something, how can that be? Then it's worth discussing, at least. And it might be that everyone says, well, no, it makes sense to me. That's okay. Oh, fair enough. So I think that the idea of writing dystopian things is not to be doom and gloom everywhere and everything is terrible and we're all going to die. It's to show what, in my opinion, could happen. This could happen if we carry on doing what we're doing now. Or religion. Have you ever thought that? Look at this. This happens because of religion. How does that work for you? How does that make sense for you? Because it doesn't make sense to me. So you're asking questions. You're offering a vision of the future that's unlikely perhaps, but possible, definitely possible nonetheless. And that's sort of my interest, really. And it's always about engaging in one way or another, with what people think and why they think and why they behave the way they do and what will happen because of it, what could happen because of it.
And finally, then, for you, this also, you've always been inspired by science fiction and then kind of thinking about the future. So now that we live in a time where the future is very difficult to predict in terms of kind of what we're able to do, how do you see kind of the next couple of years in terms of what you will be able to do as a musician?
I don't think there'll be sort of significant changes in the next couple of years. I would never have predicted streaming, for example. Okay. I'm not particularly visionary in that sense. I kind of see what there is as a human condition and where it could go. But as far as sort of technology advances and so on, I'm pretty pretty dim, I think. I remember back in the day when I did my second album was Replicas, and I was trying to think about how humans, or London actually, would evolve in the next 50 to 100 years or so. And the answer to me then seemed to be that the obvious solution to trying to create a smooth running society would be to let an artificial intelligence cover it, because it wouldn't have the self-interest and the loyalties and all those sort of things that kind of pull society apart.
Sure.
But then on the album, the obvious thing that the artificial intelligence comes up with is that the only problem to a smooth running society is people.
Right.
So that's get rid of people. So it developed a system where it could slowly but systematically weed out people without it really being noticed until it was too late for people to be able to do anything about it. It was already in control of everything. And it did that by appealing to by creating an elite within this system, appealing to them so that they were quite happy to stay with things as they were, as long as they were still looked after. And that allowed it to do this evil. It's a little bit, it's kind of sort of Nazi-ish in a way that they indoctrinated and created an elite and allowed them to do this thing longer than otherwise they would have done, so that the public sort of didn't revolt too soon. But even back then, I saw human beings as the problem that needed to be eliminated. And here we are 40 years later, and I'm pretty much saying the same thing, but for a different reason. We are a mistake.
I like, do you know the comedian George Carlin? I like the way he describes it. We're a surface nuisance.
Yeah. We're an infestation on the planet. That we are one of nature's rare mistakes, and we should not be here. We were given too much curiosity. We were given too much self-interest, too much of a desire to reproduce. That's a problem for every woman walking down the street. The man's desire to want to dominate and reproduce is pretty savage. We are just flawed in so many ways as a creature. And look at us. We have this superb brain that is capable of all these things, and we just use it so unwisely, so badly, so much of the time. And so we are like this cancer. We are a cancer on the surface of the planet, exploding exponentially, completely out of control, with no self-restraint whatsoever. So what can you do with something like that? You have to stop it.
Kind of, self-awareness is then very important at that point. The last thought then, because you, have you written since Intruder? Have you written new songs?
I've got 3 underway, but I've not finished anything actually. But ideas, melodies and tunes. I've got a drum groove on one. I normally start everything with melody actually, so coming up with a drum groove. But I was actually working with one of my children on their songs, and in the process of looking for some drum grooves for it, I came across one that I thought would be perfect for me. Put that to one side. But normally I just start, everything starts with piano and melody, which is what most of it is so far. So I'm underway with it, but it hasn't got very far yet. But I am obliged to make another one this year. So there will be a new album coming out sort of April 2022. So Intruder is like a staggered double album. There will be a second half of Intruder, which would be called something else. It won't be called Intruder 2, but nonetheless, it is a second half of this Intruder album. So I'm looking for how to develop this idea in a way that would make sense. And what I'm thinking is, if we are in fact at war with the planet without actually realizing it at the moment, how would that be when we do realize it? Just take this a few years into the future, and now we are, it is scientifically proven that the Earth actually has identified us as hostile and is actively trying to get rid of us as a species. Nature is trying to get rid of a species. How do you fight that?
Well, it's a battle you can't win. I'm afraid.
It's one we shouldn't win, that's for sure. But that would be an interesting thing to explore.
Right.
Musically, so that might be either the next album, or certainly a part of it anyway.
Okay.
But I'm still kind of thinking things through at the minute.
Right. Well, looking forward to what you come up with then. Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
My pleasure. Nice to speak
Thank
to you.
you.